Sunday before or the next Sunday. And like you said, just pray about it. What is it speaking to me about? And then what could this say to my fellow Vincentians? And just often I do what's called the Lectio Divina style, which is just picking one paragraph or one word or one line out of Scripture. And you present that one line and say, okay, here's some ideas about what this means to our group. Now what does it mean to you? So you don't have to spend a lot of time on the preamble. That should be the shortest part of your reflection time. And I was telling you about that one about Veronica wiping the face of Jesus. I chose that one because that Friday we were going to be leading the Stations of the Cross during Lent as a Vincentian family. So I wanted them to focus on the Stations of the Cross, what it meant to them historically, and then what it meant to them in their lives. And that's why I picked that. It didn't have anything to do with Scripture today, but it was something that we were planning to do. Thanksgiving's coming up. Gratitude, thankfulness is a great thing to focus upon during this time of year. Next month is remembrance time. So you can focus on praying through our ancestors in the faith, through Frederick Ozanam and so on. So there's all kinds of little things. They don't have to be stupendous themes that you're going to be talking about. Just something that can influence what they're talking about.
What does your conference need? Are the people in your conference very familiar with the rule? If not, over the rule. Find something in the rule. Find 3 sentences in the rule that speak to you right now. Find something that deals with one of our Vincentian saints or founders. Just open it up, pray, and it'll come to you. I know it will. Suggestions for the practicality: always try to have your reflection material out ahead of time. Whenever I'm doing reflections, I try to get them emailed to the group that I'm doing it for. If your agenda is emailed out before your meeting, then email the reflection material. You can't really expect people to, in a hurry, while they're doing other theyings, they've just come in, they're getting coffee. If the best you can do is have it on the table so they can sit down and look at it and take a couple of minutes, then do that. But better yet, email it out ahead of time. Give people a chance to think and pray and reflect. Invite everybody to participate. We don't expect everybody to participate. If your group is new to sharing things, then make sure you have some good leading questions.
I'd like to jump in at that point.
Go ahead.
The key word there was sharing.
Mm-hmm.
Discussion is not part of the spiritual reflection. Sharing is. And the difference between sharing and discussion is we're probably aware that nobody else is judging what I say. There aren't comments made after I make my reflected comment, and it's just the next person who speaks as they share what that said to them. Because then the whole attitude becomes a conversation of spiritual listening, of active listening, which sets the tone for the rest of the meeting. It's really hard to be PO'd at somebody else in the meeting if you prayed together.
Is that why you stuck your tongue out at me at the table?
Of course it was.
No.
Don't go there, Gord. Don't go there. Okay, so question?
We're trying to move away from silently reflecting on the words to sharing. And one of the things that we're trying is sort of seeding. So email, if you don't get the email to right, two or three people say, could you give some thought to this ahead of time? Could you be prepared to share at this meeting? And then hoping that will seed it for other people.
Whatever works to encourage more sharing, more whatever. There's a quote there that says, from our rule, the meeting shall include a spiritual reading followed by an exchange. Vincentians are encouraged to participate actively in sharing. There's more to it, but that's it. Actively encouraged to share. So this is such an important part. It's not just we recite the prayer, we recite the opening prayer in rote and we move on. No, it's, we take time to share, we take time for each other.
And divide it up so that the people who are there are actually participating in it. If you're the spiritual advisor and it's a show of one person, have one person be taught, you speak to them before the meeting, say, can you do this, read this piece of scripture? Another person read this reflection, another person, you read the questions, so that you're not just a show of one, it's everybody's involved in the process of together, learning how to share together.
So I have a question then.
Yes.
I somewhat think of the spiritual side of Our Lay Apostolate as kind of one of the important powers that we have for rejuvenating. I think of rejuvenating not in the way that often the word is used to mean things like succession planning, but I mean reinvigorating, put it that way, reinvigorating. It's spiritual reinvigoration. So I guess my question is, how do we get this to percolate through all of the conferences? It's one thing to have a meeting twice a year of your council and 5 minutes at the beginning with a spiritual reflection. How can we get that to be happening in all of the conferences and all of their meetings?
Well, what we do is, first of all, we have a meeting every month rather than quarterly, even within our conference. But we also do spiritual activities or activities faith-based throughout the year. So we have a soup day, which is run by the St. Vincent de Paul. We do spiritual leaders day. So Frederick Ozanam's day or St. Vincent de Paul day, I send out a reflection to our group and a prayer to St. Vincent that they could say during that day sometime, whether it's a coffee break or whatever. So keep them active on an ongoing basis,
Engaged.
to keep them engaged
Are you asking
in their
about
faith.
specifically about the meeting stuff though? About meetings being, spiritual reflection being done well at every conference meeting?
Yeah.
I hope that this kind of thing will do it. That was the reason for putting together this book.
Well, the reason I ask that is that in our, for example, in our council in Ottawa, there are no spiritual directors in any conference. Only is there a spiritual director in the city council, and that only meets twice a year.
Oh dear, oh dear.
So there's almost no
We've got to get the
spiritual
message, gotta get the message out. This is, if you're a president, it's your job. It's not an option. It doesn't say, our rule and regulations and our whole method of operation doesn't say you should have a spiritual advisor. By the way, we are called spiritual advisors. We're not chaplains, we're not directors, the title is spiritual advisor. And that's ad venial, walking along with. You need somebody who does what you do in your conference, who's fully participating. It's another reason for not putting on your poor overburdened priest who can't do these things with you. But we've got to get the message out to our presidents that it's an obligation. You must appoint somebody.
So this is not just the president of the council?
No, this is the
every
president of
conference.
Should
every
not-
conference.
it should never be
Read
the president of the
the rule says, it's a job of every president at every level.
To have a spiritual
But what
advisor.
she's saying is you are not to be the spiritual advisor yourself.
Right.
How can you advise yourself?
Exactly.
doesn't make
How can
sense,
you walk
right?
with yourself?
Yeah. So, but when we had a spiritual workshop a couple of weeks ago in Hamilton area, we're finding that some of the presidents were also the spiritual advisor.
Yeah.
Can't do that.
Can't do that.
Can't have two jobs.
Yeah, but the problem remains that very
We
many
need more members.
conferences are small. You might have the president, you might have only 3 people that are actually running that
Oh,
conference.
one of them had better be a spiritual advisor. Take turns, people. Or bring somebody, come on, we need to, and Phil, we need to recruit, right? Phil's big thing is recruitment. We need to recruit. We need to.
But even if it's a group of 6, one of the other vice presidents or the treasurer could act as, in turn, as the spiritual advisor as well.
So what's in my mind is the idea of, at least initially, to promote this, I think, is to have, let's say, the council has a spiritual advisor who moves among the conferences and sits in on their
Do that.
meetings,
Yeah,
okay,
That's-
and
that's
does,
the
and
job.
does this. And then encourages other people to follow in that footstep, male or female, follow in their footsteps.
yeah. And while I have a captive audience, you should also be working on social justice reps as well.
Yes, yes, that's another hat.
When John Manley Muir came to Toronto,
Yes,
he went to Mass in the cathedral, and that's where he found his first group.
that,
That's how he operated. So why are we not doing the same thing? If we go to Mass and we see someone who's prayerful, we see someone who has a heart for the poor, then that's the person we sit down and say, how would you like to come to see what we do?
Well, speaking of Mass, very many conferences will meet, and they might meet in the morning, and yet they don't go to Mass first. Like, I don't see that, I don't understand it,
No, I
but
don't either.
the vast majority of the ones, for example, I know of in Ottawa, and even when I was in Toronto, would meet at a convenient time, but they wouldn't even think that, well, let's go to Mass together first and then meet.
my experience back home, my personal conference experience is the principal meeting for a month. We have a principal meeting each month. The principal meeting each month is after the last Mass on Sunday. So that we go to Mass within the community, the greater community, and then we meet within our Ascension family, and then we go out to breakfast. Because we never do anything, we're all about feeding people, right? Because we're Ascension.
We're all about food.
We're all about food. But you know, you have to, I know that there are things being done really well in your area, and there are things that suck in your area, that need serious work. And everybody's area is like that, doesn't matter where you are. Wherever you are, there's something that you're doing that's wonderful, and there's something else that needs a lot of work.
I think the advantage is that having a booklet like this available to you, you can say, okay, this is what our goal is. Okay, and then you work towards the goal and say, okay, my first goal is to get a spiritual advisor for at least a PC. Okay, and then I'm gonna say, okay, if I got 22 conferences, I'm gonna try